Let's begin the show now. I am Prachi Bhardwaj, Senior Associate Editor at EBC, and it is my honor to welcome you all today. We gather here not only to witness the release of the book In Chambers, a young lawyer's guide to practice, ethics, and advocacy, but for a celebration of learning, of mentorship, and of the journey of advocacy. Before we begin, it is my honor to acknowledge the eminent guests who have graciously joined us today. We are deeply honored to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Gopal Subramaniam. A preeminent senior advocate and an internationally respected arbitrator, designated a senior advocate at just 35 years of age, among the youngest ever to receive that distinction. His appearances in landmark matters such as privacy and Balco, along with his tenures as Additional Solicitor General and later as the Solicitor General of India, place him at the heart of some of India's most defining legal moments. Beyond the courtroom, he is widely regarded as one of the most generous and inspiring mentors in the legal fraternity. As the BCI chairman in 2010, he led important reforms in legal education, including championing the All India Bar examination. Sir, it is a true privilege to have you here with us today. I would request Ms. Sabah Anis to felicitate Mr. Subramaniam. We are privileged to welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Shyam Divan, a distinguished senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India. Mr. Divan is widely respected for his clarity, preparation, and persuasive advocacy. His appearances in landmark cases, including privacy, Navtej Singh Johar, demonetization matters, reflects a remarkable career, highlighting his rare depth, integrity, and constitutional vision. Known for never entering the court unprepared and for always having the ear of the bench, he represents the gold standard of courtroom advocacy. We are honored to have you here with us, sir. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Rajshekhar Rao, designated as a senior advocate by the Delhi High Court in 2021. Mr. Rao is known for handling a wide range of complex disputes, including challenges to arbitral awards, and has appeared in significant matters such as Delhi oxygen crisis and marital rape law case. A first-generation lawyer, he is admired not only for his courtroom clarity and calm precision, but also for his humility, strong work ethic, and generosity in mentoring young lawyers. And as the story goes, what began as an excuse to meet his friends in Bangalore ended with him becoming a gold medalist, proof that destiny sometimes works quietly. We are honored to have you here with us, sir. I would request Ms. Sonali Ahuja to felicitate Mr. Rao. Guiding our conversation this evening is Ms. Liz Mathew, Senior Advocate at the Supreme Court of India, designated in 2024. Ms. Mathew has served as a standing counsel for the state of Kerala and also on the central government panel, and has appeared in significant cases such as the right to privacy of adolescents and the high-profile case of cricketer MS Dhoni's depiction as Lord Vishnu on a magazine, and has also assisted the court as amicus curiae in important matters. Beyond the courtroom, she is a strong voice for first-generation women lawyers and has been a part of important conversations on mentorship, gender, and work-life balance in the profession. We are delighted to have you here with us now. I would request Ms. Muskan Navlani to felicitate Ms. Mathew. We are now delighted to welcome the man of the moment, our author, Mr. Talha Abdul Rahman, the man who brought the entire Delhi in this one room. An advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India with extensive experience across constitutional, administrative, criminal, and citizenship law. His book, In Chambers, shares invaluable guidance for young practitioners and reflects his commitment to legal mentorship and professional excellence. Thank you for making EBC a part of this special journey. I would like to request Ms. Ankita Kumari to felicitate Mr. Rahman. Founded in 1942 by two visionary brothers, EBC has consistently been at the forefront of delivering high-quality legal resources to both professionals and students. In an ever-evolving legal landscape, EBC serves as a crucial link between the law and those it serves, fostering understanding and accessibility. To formally set the tone for the evening, may I invite Mr. Sumit Malik, Director EBC, to deliver the welcome address.
Mr. Gopal Subramaniam, Mr. Shyam Divan, Mr. Rajshekhar, Ms. Mathew, Senior Advocates, Mr. Surain Malik, Chief Editor, Supreme Court Cases, and our author, Mr. Talha Abdul Rahman, other senior advocates, students, and gentle people. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome all of you to this event where we will be celebrating the release of the book, In Chambers, a young lawyer's guide to practice, ethics, and advocacy. I am grateful to our chief guest, our guests of honor, for taking the time out to participate in this event. Our association with Talha as an author is a new one. This is his first book we've published. In a couple of days, we launch our AI Pro tool for SEC Online. With AI so much part of our lives, how do we at EBC see our role? What is the role of a publisher? In today's context, I can say that we see ourselves as the trustee of the legacy of authors. We have, over the years, continued to preserve the legacy of our authors, names that are synonymous with the study, teaching, and practice of law. Professor V.N. Shukla, Professor Kelkar, Dr. Avtar Singh, Professor Ahmed Siddiqui, Shri V.D. Mahajan, Shri V.G. Ramachandran, Professor T.K. Tope, Professor B.M. Gandhi, and others. A book, as I see it, is a custodian of thoughts and ideas. Judges, while deciding cases, are bound to decide the lists before them based on the given set of facts and apply the law to those facts. Authors, whereas when writing books, do not face such limitations. A good author will explain the law to their audience, but a great author will also show the light forward by sharing their thoughts and ideas in a book as of what they believe the law ought to be. This book, however, is slightly different from a classic legal text. Of the people on the dais, Mr. Subramaniam and Mr. Divan have been, and I can say of them, of being mentors to so many, and for Raj, Liz, and Talha being my contemporaries and having witnessed their journeys, of having received wonderful mentorship and today being mentors themselves. But not every entrant to the profession may find themselves as fortunate. Thus, in the context of this book, the role of an author assumes even deeper significance, that of a mentor. Law schools, for all the rigor, often teach doctrine but cannot always impart craft. The skills of practice, judgment, ethics, and professional instincts are learned unevenly and sometimes not at all within formal classrooms. It is here that a well-written book like this steps into the vacuum. Through clarity of thought, lived experience, and intellectual honesty, Talha guides a young lawyer in ways no syllabus can, anticipating questions, warning of pitfalls, and modeling how the law must be approached, not merely understood. A book thus becomes a silent senior in chambers, offering mentorship that is patient, enduring, and accessible to every reader willing to learn. It is with this spirit of guardianship, of nurturing and advancing legal tradition, that we reflect on the evolution of our own publishing house. The changing landscape of law and technology challenges us, yet also inspires us to reaffirm our core mission, to support the legal fraternity with resources that are not only current, but also enduring. The books and platforms we curate are meant to serve both as anchors to the wisdom of the path and beacons lighting the way for future innovation and reform. We recognize that our responsibilities grow with each passing year. Each new project, whether it is a comprehensive legal treatise or a cutting-edge digital tool, is undertaken with the awareness that it will become part of the daily life of practitioners, judges, students, and academics. The trust placed in us is both humbling and motivating. In an era where information is abundant, but discernment is rare, we strive to ensure that every publication bearing our name upholds the highest standards of scholarship and utility. This stewardship in our responds to the faith reposed in us by generations of legal professionals and by the authors whose legacies we are privileged to preserve. The philosophy of stewardship, balancing reverence for tradition with hunger for progress, runs deep within the fabric of our publishing house. The narratives of law, scholarship, and service are not merely preserved in the books we produce, but are actively shaped by the choices we make as curators and innovators. Our journey is one not of solitary achievement, rather it is woven from the collective efforts of generations, each building upon the foundations laid by those before them. The journey of our publishing house is deeply interwoven with the story of legal India itself, a story marked by perseverance, adaptability, and a commitment to public good. Each page we publish echoes the countless hours invested by teams dedicated not only to accuracy, but also to the lasting relevance of their work. In this way, our catalog becomes not merely a collection of texts, but a living archive, a repository where legal evolution and collective memory find a home. Looking back on decades of progress, we recognize that behind every milestone lies a spirit of humility and service. Our founders set forth not with grand resources, but with an unwavering dedication to the needs of their community. It is with the same dedication which drives us today, urging us to innovate, to reach wider audiences, and to nurture the next generation of legal minds. Our ethos is grounded in the belief that knowledge one shares multiplies in value. Every legal insight disseminated, every doctrine clarified becomes a stepping stone for greater understanding and societal advancement. In the face of this rapid technological change and shifting paradigms, our mission remains steadfast to deliver content that is not only timely, but also timeless. Not only informative, but transformative. We see ourselves not merely as publishers, but as custodians of a living discipline, charged not just with reflecting the present, but also shaping the future. As a third generation member of this publishing house, I am grateful for the guidance of my elders. Our story began in 1942, when my granduncle and grandfather, then humble booksellers, served the legal professionals, including the legendary Mr. Ambedkar. Their core mission was and remains to provide resources that genuinely support practitioners. When EBC transitioned to publishing in 1947, our focus was delivering high-quality, useful books for lawyers and students. The introduction of Supreme Court cases, SCC in 1969, driven by a need for faster and more accurate reporting, further strengthened our reputation. Today, SCC continues to uphold its foundational principles of promptness, accuracy, and reliability, covering even the previously unreported judgments from 1950 to 1968. Recently, we launched HCC, High Court cases, to bring the same standard reporting to High Court judgments. With the addition of Complete Law Institute to EBC, we now offer renowned journals like the income tax reports, company cases, and the GSTR in both print and digital formats. Innovation has always been part of our legacy. From pioneering legal research on CD-ROM in the 1990s, we have expanded to the SCC Online Web Edition, now hosting over 20 terabyte of data for almost 6 million documents across 300 plus jurisdictions. While printed books remain vital, our EBC Reader platform offers over 400 ebooks, continually growing. Our online blog, SCC Times, reaches over 1.5 million views and 1 million visitors monthly, providing the legal community with timely analytical news. New ventures like EBC Learning, our online education platform, and Mercury, a judgment tracking tool, are also gaining popularity. Through every evolution, EBC's mission remains to serve the legal community with trustworthy, innovative, and accessible resources. It has been wonderful working with Talha on this book, and we hope that this will be one of many that he decides to author. I am also grateful to our EBC team, legal editors, engineers, DTP staff, proofreaders, sales and marketing personnel, whose commitment stands our standards of quality and reliability. Special thanks to Ms. Nilufar Bhateja, our hard-working legal editor who worked on this book. I also appreciate the efforts of Prachi, Muskan, Sonali, and the others in organizing today's event. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. With that, we come to the highlight of the day, that is the book release. May I request our chief guest and all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly unveil the book And I would also like to request Mr. Surendra Malik, Mr. Sumit Malik, and Mr. Sudeep Malik to please join the dignitaries. What an incredible moment to witness. This book is more than a publication. It is a mentor in print for young members of the bar. Please give another big round of applause for this amazing book. सबको मिलता है यहाँ प्यास के मुताबिक पानी, जिसको जितनी हो तलब उतना ही सागर होगा. This couplet by Jigar Muradabadi beautifully reminds us that growth and learning come in proportion to one's thirst. In chambers, skill is forged in the fire of observation, discipline, mistakes, long hours, all of which slowly build confidence and courage. With that spirit, we now move to our panel discussion on the theme Training in Chambers, Skill, Courage, Judgment and Responsibility. Over to you, Ms. Mathew.
Good evening, everyone. I think it's overwhelming to see such a big crowd on a precious Friday evening. So many people who have turned up to listen to Mr. Subramaniam, Mr. Divan, and Rajshekhar Rao, and on the splendid book that Talha has written. I've had the privilege of having the book a week in advance, and I have been going through it. And I must say, it is a brilliant book which sort of bridges the gap between theory that you learn in law school and the practical realities of practice. In fact, what I think Talha does is democratize legal learning in the hallowed chambers of people like Mr. Subramaniam, where Talha has been a junior, and Mr. Divan and Mr. Rao. There are certain practices which not everybody is privy to. I think here we have a lot of younger juniors who are very keen to know what really happens. And this book, I think, essentially democratizes those conventions and makes that particular learning, which is accessible to a few, available to the world at large, which I think that's a great service that Talha has done in penning down this book. And as Sumit mentioned, the mentorship that is offered by Mr. Divan, Mr. Subramaniam and Mr. Rao is well known in the legal community. So let me start this discussion by turning the clock back and asking them how their initial years at practice were and what is the nature of mentorship that they had received, which has made them excellent mentors of today. Let me start with Raj, who will be placed in a very difficult position because his mentor is sitting right here.
So you see, the first thing we were taught as juniors is always prepare your brief. You never know when the senior may not turn up or just hand over the brief to you. So this is one of those moments, and that was my first lesson. But on a more serious note, thank you, Talha, for doing this, because it does two things. It, as Liz says, opens up an entire universe which, to a large extent, as far as I'm concerned, and I say it with some sense of what's happening, is forgotten. I've had somebody who came to me and said, you live in another universe and another generation. I think you're out of touch with reality. My reality is sitting here. My reality is Justice Malhotra. I had two bosses, my first boss and my second boss. And I've gone on the record to say that they're the ones who shaped what I am today. I think, Mr. Nariman says it's important. Your stables define you. And since I'm known to crack bad ones, I'm not horsing around here. My early days, I worked with Mr. Subramaniam at different stages of his career. I started with him and he was a private lawyer. He became Additional Solicitor General. He became Solicitor General. And I've seen different variations of the individual and the pressures that came with it and how he handled them. Today, if I'm in a bad spot or I'm in a sticky space, I put myself in his shoes 8 out of 10 times. And I think for me, the minute I do that, the answers come very easily. There are some very distinct things that we were told, there are very few gray areas as far as we are concerned when we come from chambers like that. And that for me is what it defines. So my early days were, timings didn't matter. I remember once I was called into the office at 7 in the morning. I reached at 7:10 and he'd already looked at the opinion and said, I've done it here, take it. Okay. Never then missed that deadline to the extent that I could. There are days when I was probably a mess. I couldn't speak up, but my boss saw it, called me aside, told me to sit in a car with him, travel the journey, and somewhere along the way said something to me and said, if you think you're in a bad space, forget it, throw it into the dustbin. His exact words, I don't know, sir, if you remember, at the T point of the Ashoka was, if you have any doubts about what you're doing with your life and where you are headed, I would suggest throw it into the dustbin. So early years, very tough, lots of fun. I was fortunate to have great friends. And I think that's what defines the chamber. All of us today, at varying points of our life over the last 20, 25 years, have had occasions where we've had to take calls. And I think, I'm very proud to say that the calls that all of us took were calls that were defined by who we worked with. So choose your stables wisely. And if you can't choose your stable wisely, read this book, it'll guide you there.
Mr. Divan, if you could speak about mentoring, especially in the Bombay context, I think it's very different from what we see in other places.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, my congratulations to Talha for a fabulous book. It's a great read. It's written in simple English, very conversational, nicely divided into short paragraphs, and it was really a joy for me to sort of run through it. And I think he mentions that actually in his book, that the importance of good, clear drafting. And you can see that he's really put it to practice, because he uses expressions which each one of us can relate to, pick up very easily. And congratulations again for a fabulous effort. Okay, so I started in Bombay. And my first senior was a gentleman called Firdaus Talia Khan, who Gopal knows well. And the reason I knew Firdaus was he used to sort of vet my treks into the Himalayas, because he was a climber. And so I knew him from school and college, and he would say, yeah, well, take this path and drop this and what not. So there was this nice sort of friendship which we had. And then when an opportunity came, when I had to join a chamber, I told my dad that, look, wouldn't Firdaus be a very good choice, because I know him as well. And my dad was very supportive of that. And so we went across to meet Firdaus. And Firdaus said that, look, I don't have a chamber. So in Bombay, there's just no place to sit in those days. There was just no place to sit. So he said that you've got to join my senior, that's Firdaus' senior, who was Rahman Joshi, R.J. Joshi. And talking about stables, Rahman Joshi, Miss Temtan and Dyarujina, Rahman Joshi and Atul Settleward were the three juniors of Sirvai. And so Rahman Joshi sat in Sirvai's old chamber, and there was a desk for him and there was a desk for Atul Settleward. And there was a whole bunch or warren of juniors, all very competent and very good, very personable, but just no place to sit. As it happened, all of them were tossed out when I was doing my LLM overseas. And so when I returned, the chamber, sort of everyone was liberated. And I suddenly had actually an office to go to, and Firdaus was gracious enough to have a small desk for me. So you could sort of sit in on that. And I continued to be Firdaus' junior until, for the first 3 years, which I'll tell you a thing or two about. But he unfortunately very prematurely died while climbing in the Himalayas. And that was a tremendous loss to the bar. I mean, obviously an enormous personal loss. And I found myself orphaned. And what does one do? And then I sort of went across and asked Mr. Andyarujina. So I had the advantage of both joining Firdaus' chamber and Temtan's chamber in Bombay before sort of migrating across here. So just 3 or 4 points from the Bombay experience. The first thing was that in Bombay, there's a waiting period where you just don't get briefed. And I mean, that's not uncommon, I suppose. and you just sort of hang around there. But Firdaus had 2 or 3 lessons. He said, just look around you and you will see people who are enormously or reasonably successful, and that will give you the assurance that you too can succeed in the profession. And I think that was very reassuring, because you saw a stupendous amount of, mediocrity, but rise to a very high level around you. The second lesson he gave was that he said, in a day, there will be a couple of things which you can pick up on what to do, but there's a lot more which you can learn on what not to do just from observing others. I suppose that's pretty universal. You can see that in, every court across the country. But these were 2 very, very important lessons, which were, initial. And the third one, because I see there's been a sort of transformation in public interest litigation. It was just beginning at that time when I joined in the 1980s. And he said something very important, which I think I should share with you. And he said that, look, if you have a paid brief and a pro bono brief, you have to give the pro bono brief higher preference. Because let not a client ever say that he was chasing money or she was chasing money. So I thought that was, a lesson which has sort of remained with me for many years. And then maybe later on in the conversation, I'll have something else to share. Thanks.
I think your contribution to BAG, like many, is something that all of us have seen. Now, if I could have Mr. Subramaniam also reflect on the early days and how he has become such a generous mentor today.
It's not easy to speak about a journey, but I'll try to give you some flavor. I was deeply blessed to be born in a family where both my parents were lawyers. And the blessing manifested in many ways. And one was that you could see great lawyers when you were very young. So I had a glimpse of MC Setalvad. I had a glimpse of Daftari. I had a glimpse of S.V. Gupte. I didn't see H.N. Sanyal because he had unfortunately been murdered by the time. I saw Niran Day and downwards. And from Bombay, I paid special attention to Atul Setalvad, Tempton, and Yarujina, Sirvai, that few times when he came and appeared at that time, and of course, one of my very defining legends, Mr. Anil Divan. I was blessed to be in the chambers of Mr. Soli Sorabji, who was extraordinary. He was meticulous, he was very sharp, and he was able to intuitively steer your moral forces in the right direction. But this is one part of it. There is another part which has to be acknowledged. That is, just like Shyam, I had the opportunity to appear before some of the greatest judges. Judges who typified extraordinarily high standards of personal rectitude and who conducted their courts in such a flawless manner that you felt that you were subconsciously absorbing some nutrition, a moral nutrition which would keep you going. And with that kind of nourishment, you wouldn't even need physical nourishment. It was the sheer joy of going and sitting in their court and observing how they transacted with other lawyers and what were the standards of conduct expected from lawyers in court. That these 3 words in Talha's book, namely practice, ethics, and advocacy, they all fused into one common expression, that in a courtroom, there are 2 dynamic forces at work. one is the lawyer and the other is the judge, and both must have a shared set of values and a shared set of understandings, and how to actually negotiate in that interpersonal exchange so that the right thing happens. This sense of the right thing happening, I think, was the most important feeling for me. It did not matter whether I won a case or lost a case. It was, I should feel that the right thing has happened. It is this feeling which is really the feeling of self-validation. And I would advise all of you that the first perimeter is established inside you. And it is that perimeter to which you are accountable. The moment you feel that there is an approval, please trust it, please stay with it, please build upon it, and please catapult on it. But the first stop is your own self. The second is peer acceptance. But peer acceptance, I mean here in a very, very serious way. Here I mean that somebody who is a peer, whom you can take into confidence, either he unilaterally acknowledges you or you seek his acknowledgement. I think that is a very important means of validation. And you must choose that peer on these standards of integrity, of faithfulness to the court, faithfulness to the profession. Now let me come to a third part, and that part needs to be said. That while you've heard this expression mentor, it's a very appealing expression. It carries with it a certain level of authority. But I must say, I have been influenced by all the so-called mentees. They changed me. They worked on me. They did that silently. I would not be where I am but for them. That is an acknowledgement which should be made publicly. The last is, the journey is a continuing one. And no day is like any old day. Amongst you here, there is a wonderful lawyer, and I'm privileged that Kamini took out time and made herself present here. I have seen her over the years fight for pro bono cases exactly the way Shyam described a lawyer should take up such causes. I have seen the standards of accountability which she demanded from the profession, her colleagues and judges. She is a beacon of light and hope. And every one of you is equally unique, equally plenary, and equally possessed of all kinds of unique capacities which should produce the best possible talent. T.S. Eliot once said, and it took me a long time to understand what he meant in that essay. And that is an essay which I would recommend all lawyers, if they have not read it, to read it. It is called Tradition and Individual Talent. It is only in the knowledge of tradition and the continuity of tradition that will talent itself be able to identify. You will never be able to understand talent in a relative sense unless you place it in the backdrop of tradition. Despite his busy schedule, Talha was restive for some time. He always has been wanting to do something more, create something more, and also do something which is of considerable application and utility to his fellow colleagues. So he first discussed with me the idea of writing this book. And when I read through the book, I must say, I felt so amply justified in the trust, faith, confidence, and expectation which I reposed in him. So it's a great moment for me. But there is one other person too who needs a special tribute. It is a gentleman who is sitting in the front. And he happened to know my father, my late father. He is the moving spirit behind the Supreme Court cases. He has maintained the same standard of unassuming and sincere, positive attitude for everyone in his life. I don't know whether any one of you will have the opportunity to see how he used to make head notes. And if anyone is familiar with his handwriting, you will know that that is what is handwriting extolled for. It is a privilege to be present in his august presence. Thank you.
If I may now drive the conversation to some of the themes that Talha has addressed in the book, which are of relevance to the crowd gathered here and to the legal community in general, and where we would like to know the opinion of our panelists here. Let me start with 2-3 things that I would like to go to address. First is, yesterday in my discussion with Mr. Subramaniam said that it is the responsibility of the lawyer who are in protecting the institution and dispensation and majesty of the courts, and the quality of justice really depends on the interaction between the bench and the bar. And to that end, there are certain conventions which are developed. Some of it he did speak about. Some of it is mentioned in Talha's book. And certain conventions which are maybe as simple as the fact that when you're in a court hall and yours is the last matter, you do not leave the court before the bench rises and goes, is something that we who have the privileges of being in chambers which have practiced it have seen, but which is possibly not known to many people now. So these conventions, what is it relevant, and how does it foster dispensation of justice? I don't think it is only a matter of procedure. I think it goes further than that. What is your advice, sir, as far as the junior members of the bar are concerned with respect to the traditions, conventions of the bar?
Some conventions contribute to the sobriquet of the setting of an institution, that it is orderly, it is decent, it has the insignia of dignity, because justice has to be functionally performed in an area where it is both open to public scrutiny but is conducted with great dignity, where there is no evidence of anger or malice, or shall we say, where both sides are effectively heard and equally accommodated. But that is one aspect of it. The more important aspect of a convention is a statement of fact being correctly represented to the court. And I have to say with with some degree of sadness that that convention has been departed from, because in my earlier years, I have seen how this convention was meticulously observed and how a violation or an infraction of this convention could result in absolutely terrible consequences for the client of the lawyer who did not maintain rectitude in the matter of presentation of a fact. For instance, there was a matter. It was being argued by a very eminent lawyer. I was sitting in court. As Mr. Andiarujina mentioned, it is very wise to see and observe and also discern what one should do and not do. This counsel was about to win the case, and he made one statement off the record, just one. The judge said, "Can you just show me where is it?" And he just thumbed the leaves of the brief, and he dismissed the petition. He said, "Please don't do this ever again." Now, if you have seen judges actually react on a regular basis with you, or with lawyers, this will be a part of your own value pattern as far as conducting yourself in court is concerned. But if you see that there are narratives which are actually spun out, like a mystery thriller from facts which are joined from where? From little pieces and pieces, and a lot is actually a narrative built in the air. Now, you might wonder that this is all completely off the record, and how does one deal with it? But if, suppose, judges do not prevent it, it can lead to a miscarriage of justice. Therefore, I think conventions have a very important role to play. It is necessary, I think, that these should be consolidated and documented. As young lawyers, like I had the great privilege of knowing the senior Dr. Singhvi, and I asked him about the best book for etiquette, for a lawyer's etiquette, and there he was, quick, razor sharp. He said, "Go to the library, you will get this book called Bolton's Etiquettes of Advocacy." I went and read that book in the judge's library. I'm afraid there is no judge's library in the main building. But earlier, we could walk across and have access to the library, a magnificent library. In fact, some of the books which they have are extraordinary. So conventions are important. And I think the best way one can inform oneself about them is to inquire about them. And I think this has to be a common endeavor for all of us, whether it is lawyers or whether it is judges. In a spirit of mutuality and humility, we have to inform ourselves.
Thank you, sir, for that. Moving on to something else, which this question I will ask Mr. Divan. Mr. Divan, I have seen in the early years, I don't see that anymore, had a little directory of case law, which he would carry it. This is before the MacBooks or the tablets came. The physical directory of case law would be in his hand, and he would routinely update that. So that was a body of knowledge and law that he always had. Today, in the day of AI and legal research, of course, the fact that EBC and the access to researching law quickly and so efficiently, which EBC has brought about, has also dulled for many of us the need to be on top of the law at every point in time, because we have the confidence that, in a few clicks, you would know what the position of law is. But on this body of knowledge, on the body of law, and keeping oneself updated, let me also just read out one thing which I think Talha has on with respect to AI. I think what he has said, AI is something that is going to pervade our life. But an advice that Talha says in the book, if I may just read: So long as you're using AI as a slave, it is acceptable. The moment you let AI become a master and let it take reins from you in the name of freeing up your time, the quality of your legal work will suffer. Your comments on that, sir?
Okay, very quickly. So I think the first thing I want to make a pitch for is for reading books, actually, not just this book, but generally, I think reading. Perhaps the best and the most difficult books to write are children's books. And because a child, unless the book is really good, a child will just, put it aside and say, sorry, too boring. I don't like it. Children's books actually have stupendous insights. I was delighted just a week ago when there was a school book which I used to borrow from my library in school, and it had just fallen off the map. It's called High, Wide and Handsome. And I wanted this book on 3 tall tales. And then I got it on eBay, and it sort of landed up, which I was sort of viewing this book after, 50, 60 years or something of that sort. And it was a great joy. But when I revisited this children's book, there was a lot of learning in it. And I think it's not just, it's the non-law books which you really pick up from. And I urge the young lawyers here that, look, you have these fantastic technologies of search engines and now AI to aid and assist you. But there's something about that technology called a book. Studying it, reading it, reflecting on it, the way it sort of registers at the back of your mind. I think it'll help each one of you develop ideas, probably graduate into authorship at some point of time. So that's one thing which I would make a pitch for. I have this habit, and which continues to sort of maintain a case diary. But it's, I think, just the way memory works for each one of us. Oftentimes, I started this when I was in Bombay, and these judgments from SCC would come, and I would just say, this is so outlandish. What sort of principle is the Supreme Court laying down over here? And it was only when I moved here and I observed the court that I realized that the judges of our Supreme Court take the business of laying down new principles very seriously. And so it's part of the function of the Supreme Court to guide the law in a slightly different direction. And when that penny dropped, I realized that it's important to read these recent offerings from the Supreme Court and probably note them, because it guides you in a slightly different direction. And, it sort of stimulates you to think and to create and to probably come up with some ideas. So books, this book for sure, but other books as well, general reading for sure. And then it's just a question of tricks as to how you develop your memory. But I want to just mention one thing, because this is, by the way, I might just be, might be a bit of a rant which my chamber colleagues are accustomed to. When you're picking up a book, you have a table of contents, you have an index, you sometimes have an abstract of a chapter. You sometimes land up on the wrong page and you read something and it engages you. That doesn't tend to happen if you're just diving straight into a case law research or just into a sort of statute, because it's very restrictive. So rediscover books.
If I can add, I think it's a magnificent suggestion, and particularly books of, I think, different genres are important, because there is a lot of neurological evidence in relation to the functioning of the brain, that when you read books of different nature, there are different openings which are happening. Apart from enjoying reading a book, it has tremendous consequences. It is certainly being explored as one of the most assured forms of delaying, shall we say, some of the neurodegenerative diseases. That's one part. The second part about your being shocked when you came to Delhi and you saw all these orders and so on and so forth, is again because there has been a change in the conventions and the practices in the court. Earlier, judgments were signed and they used to be called blueprints. I'm now talking of judgments from 1950 up to 1968. They are called blueprints. They were in green paper, they were printed, and they were signed. So you must know that was the certified copy of the record of judgments in the Supreme Court. And there was a system that when a judgment was being pronounced, the judge had a duty to inform the court master, reportable or non-reportable. You must know that a very eminent senior from Bombay came once and he appeared before a bench of 3 judges in court number 4. It was presided over by Justice Alagiri Swami. I was physically present. And he gave 3 copies of an unreported order and asked the judge to look at it. The judge simply picked it up and said, "Is this reported?" He just asked the court master to take it back. They were so strict. Then, of course, everything got reported. And I think SEC, with their very enduring smile and perseverance, and they have managed to make a lot of sense out of orders which may not necessarily be read that way, and they have infused us with great politeness.
I think now they can start with working on a restatement so that, understanding the law is easier for all of us. Okay. Now I have a question for Raj, who I think will be most familiar with social media out of the panelists here. I think many of us get reels from Raj on various subjects, but to start, let me just read some part of what Talha has written on this. And this is something, when I talk to my chamber juniors, this is something that a lot of juniors want to know as to what it is that... So I will start with Raj, but I would also like to have Mr. Divan and Mr. Subramaniam contribute to this. So let me just read this. And the heading of this portion of the book is advertisement. And he talks about how advertising is prohibited, etc. But this part, depending on the phrasing of how it is written, a promotional post on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram may fall in the realm of advertising, and lawyers should be careful in such circumstances. What is promotional and what is informative or a life update is still in the shadows. So if I could hear, I think that the juniors here especially are, always wondering what are the boundaries of self-promotion or information about cases that they've done. So that's something that we would, if you could shed some light on.
Okay, so when you send reels to somebody very often, it's called pebbling. Okay, it's a way of showing you care. But no, so this is where I think the point that Mr. Divan and Mr. Subramaniam said about conventions comes into play. We've always seen them speak inside a courtroom about cases. I've rarely seen both of them talk about cases they've handled outside. They're also extremely reticent about speaking outside in the ordinary course. That's something that at least I and my friends who've been through the chambers have taken away. Very simple rule, you don't talk about your work. And that is the practice. Why? Because somewhere along the way, and I've gone public very recently to say this whole point on LinkedIn. So you wake up in the morning and you see a Facebook post which says, got this brilliant bail order today, right? Sometimes somebody is smart enough to redact the cause title. More often than not, even the cause title and appearances are there. And I cringe, and that's the word I've used. And unfortunately, and that is in that context, somebody told me, I think you're out of touch with reality, right? There are 50 ways for you to make your presence felt in this profession. You do a great job inside a courtroom, 50 people are watching. We've all learnt that that's the easiest way to showcase your skills. You work hard, more often than not, you'll get that one chance and you'll do what you have to do. You can write. Talha has written a beautiful book. You write articles. You go speak at events which are in fact formal events. You write in the newspaper. You have the ability to make a point. But there are lines that we don't cross. So And I think we're all clear. I mean, the law says you can't advertise, right? So, and the thin line is in everybody's head. And that's where I think the point that Mr. Subramaniam said, you have to define your boundaries. And as long as you know what you're doing is right, that's fine. But there are some things that are not right. And if you think it's right, it's still not right. And that is really why I say that, I put myself in those shoes. Social media is a fantastic tool. I spend a lot of time on it. I'm the oldie 50-year-old or near 50-year-old whose children have put a timer on his Instagram, right? But for me, it's a way to get away from reality. And for me, it's something that I use to shoot inanimate objects more often than not. But yes, I mean, Liz was mentioning, so I've just done 2 podcasts recently. And the second one, I was visibly embarrassed because I think it was going all over the place. And it's again a space that I'm not comfortable with. But then I've had people who've come to me, and fortunately for me, I think what I was telling stories there were stories that I heard. There are times when we'd catch boss on a good evening when after a long day, he wants to tell us stories about this event, that event. I saw this council do this. This is what transpired. And a large amount of our lessons were really just watching these little things, listening to him, listening to a whole bunch of others, lunch table conversations in the Supreme Court. There was a tradition once upon a time where seniors you'd just go sit and the senior at the table would pay your bill. But along the way, he or she would give you a few stories and you'd walk away with something. Sometimes, more often than not, at least I was fortunate. I think I walked away with a lot of things as to what to do, what not to do. But I think the very, very clear thing was this. It's an unfortunate reality that you have to be visible, and it's that vicious cycle of unless you're visible, you don't get work. But I think we all found our feet somewhere along the way. Use that visibility wisely. Don't cross that line. And please, LinkedIn is becoming another Facebook, so find a better tool.
I think there is one comment I would like to add to what Raj said. The rule against advertisement or soliciting is not simply on the basis that it is something not worthy of, or that you are possibly interfering with the level playing field of all lawyers to have access to work. It could be a bit of both. But I think there is a slightly more profound consideration, which is that when you start advertising or when you start speaking about yourself, the ability to self-critique and introspect regularly gets diminished. And the only quality which I think distinguishes us as a profession from any other profession is constant self-critiquing. You need that. Without it, you can just simply make terrible mistakes. So I think it impairs, if I may say so, the ability to self-critique. Shyam, do you have any idea?
I don't really have much to add to this except to say that it's a serious problem. This whole business about, how does one project oneself in the profession. I think there's a word which I picked up from the book which is very valid, which is you have to develop a degree of resilience and you have to stay the course and believe in yourself. That's one. The second thing is I think we're veering into an age of specialization, even if you're in a generalist court. So I enjoy doing different and new types of cases. But for young lawyers, I think don't super specialize, but try and don't restrict yourself. Don't let the specialization restrict yourself. In the initial years, your practice is likely to take the shape of the chamber you join. So that's important. When you select a chamber, just remember that for the first 4 or 5 years, and in chambers and thereafter, that's what's going to color the kind of work which you get and which you build on. Thereafter, you can build it. But I think building a niche area where you are best known across, from your smaller circle is something which I would commend. That comes from writing, that comes from, commentary. You could certainly consider something like a subject area which you wish to specialize in and one article, second, third, fourth, you suddenly find that it's probably going to take the shape of a book. And I think that is one thing, other than a LinkedIn post, which is really contributing to thinking, to scholarship. And that is something you can probably share. That's something which you can put out there and get known in that area. But these are sort of conventional solutions to a very, very difficult issue.
As a reward for the people who are gathered here, since Sir said about choosing the right stable and choosing the right chamber, what is it that you would look for, since all the three of you here, I think, are the most sought after chambers? What would you look for in a junior approaching you to join the chamber?
I would, first of all, say very fairly that this is an overstated, and it is been made into a regular sort of expectation that you have to join someone. You have to join somebody. I understand the need for it. But I think if you were to frankly ask me, if one had regular structures about one's daily life and preparation and reading and a certain methodologies to be adopted, you can find your way quickly. You can find your way, and you'll be very proud of it. You don't necessarily have to tag on to anybody. It is not that I'm discouraging people from looking forward to this form of association, but in today's world, with the degree of openness which you have, particularly in the field of the internet, when you have some of the most outstanding podcasts, there's one which I would heartily recommend for all of you. It's called Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges is a journalist. He won the Pulitzer Prize. But the quality of his analysis or discussion of a book or an issue, which lasts for about 1 hour, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes, is absolutely fabulous. So today you have so much of information, and all of you are extensively so well equipped in the technical way. In technical subjects, you are far ahead of us because we all had different tools to work with. Now, those tools, you are very familiar with them. With them, you already have a galloping speed ahead of many others, but you have to employ it in a very well-directed, resourceful manner. This is, I think, the way forward. So everybody must not think that he is actually at a disadvantage because he does not have a senior. And some of us are always available, that even if we don't have a place in the chambers, we would always be available for a conversation or for a discussion. In fact, I sometimes make it a point to go behind a junior who has done something exceptional in a courtroom and make that point known so that it is a kind of affirmation. I mentioned this to you yesterday. There was a senior advocate in a case, and there was another junior advocate in that case. And I was sitting in court and watching the proceedings. The senior advocate took a little liberty with the extent of truth. So the truth was said with a half measure. It was a half measure. But this young lady, when asked by the judge, she spoke straight, honest, clear. And it's because of her that her client won the case. So I made it a point to write a letter to her and congratulate her that this is what is expected in the legal profession.
She's possibly in the audience, I don't know, but she possibly is.
If I'll just come in here for a moment. So actually, I'm a very seriously chamber person. I think all my learning was in chambers, frankly. I went to the Government Law College in Bombay, where, education is sort of completely incidental. You essentially, you learn from the city. You learn from your peers. You learn a lot of things from some of the good teachers. But, it's essentially the Bombay University is a sort of a exam machine, and education is peripheral. But that said, the practice I follow is the only thing. I don't look at a CV, by the way, since you asked that. And the only thing I look for is there room in the chamber. That's the thing. And then you sort of just accommodate someone from the bar who requests to be joined. But what should you be doing on the other side? Okay, so I think it's a great advantage to join someone who is not a designated senior, but is getting there. I think that's a very nice moment to enter a chamber. It's also an advantage, I feel, to be either junior number 1 or junior number 2, because, and I mean, I've experienced that myself. Yeah, then there's a special relationship. And the final trick, if there is a trick, is the senior should, at some point, depending on him and her work habits, should develop a certain dependence on you. I mean, that is your immediate target if you become, you join a chamber which you like, and the person really leans on you. So there's a story which I picked this up from Mr. Nariman. And Mr. Nariman said that there was this particular senior in Bombay who knew every page number in the brief. So the only way as a junior you could be of assistance to him is if he sort of slipped up for a moment and you came up, in mid-course in the delivery and said page so and so. So that was the manner in which Fali Nariman said that you could be of assistance. That was the only way you could be of assistance, because that was the small little gap, and then he'd sort of look at you and probably recommend you for another brief. That's a little bit.
No, I second what Mr. Divan is saying, because I think, sir, there's too much information and there's a lot of misinformation outside in the public domain today. It's that quality time that you spend not just with your senior, but your peers in that chamber. And for a lot of us, colleagues that we've spent, we've been fortunate to know a few of them before. Some we didn't. But they're like family. They're closer than family more often than not. And they're your moral conscience. Number 2, you have the ability to lean on each other. This profession is very unforgiving. There are several occasions where we've all felt, we've come back from a bad day in court. There was this beautiful day where Rage and Siddharth and I all had lovely bad days in court. And we all called each other and said, oh, you also had a bad day. I also had a bad day. I also had a bad day. And suddenly it was a good day, right? So, no, but I think it's important. It's a sense of kinship. It's your moral compass. Number 3, I think, as Sir says, as a junior, you watch your senior and you learn a bunch of things. But I realized, Mr. Subramaniam, I joined his chamber. He suddenly gave up everything and decided to do 2 cases. He started doing Tehelka for a year and then Parliament Attack for a year. And I went from having a lot of work on a Monday and a Friday and every day of the week to actually having no work, because there were 4 people assisting Mr. Subramaniam. And I asked myself that question, what do I do now? So I used to get into the office an hour before conferences started. So I'd get in, say, at 7 in the morning, and conference would start at 8:30. And I'd use his brief and prepare for that day, for that conference. And he noticed, he said nothing. A week later, he says, I want you to make me a note. And he gave me 2 days. And I made a note over those 2 days. And I think that is the day I realized what he expected of me. And it, in a sense, guided my future time in that chamber. What more do you want than somebody who you can look to and, just rely on blindly? So, Mr. Divan was telling you about the senior in Bombay. Mr. Subramaniam, there's a story about Mr. Subramaniam. So, similar problem. He's read everything. So, there's senior of ours before our time supposedly decided, this time I'm going to beat the boss. And he had an answer to every question. So he was really chuffed, and I believe as he was getting up, Mr. Subramaniam said, what's the civil appeal number? So there are some battles you can't win, but you must always try. So that is that. But no, I think a chamber helps. But in today's world, I think the corridors help. Mr. Nariman says you must be in court. It's not just to be seen. It's Ranjita, you remember we were having this conversation that There are so many people in this room that I probably spent more time in the last 25 years than I've spent with my own family put together. So this is also a huge, big family. And if you understand that and the advantages that it offers, this profession is a beautiful, beautiful place. It helps you overcome a whole bunch of things, and I've lived it, so I can tell you that.
I would also like to share an anecdote with respect. I learned everything that with respect to litigation at Justice Indu Malhotra's office. At that time, she was an AOR. I had finished, so I had trained with her for some time, and then I wanted to transition to being with a senior advocate, and I followed many people around, and I said, okay, Mr. Nariman, Justice Nariman, at that point did not have any juniors, so I walked behind him for a few days and then summoned the courage one day to, while he was entering the car and the Narayan was holding the door, I went and said, sir, I've been with Indu ma'am for the past about 3 years. I would really like to join you. He turned around and said, are you suicidal? Thereafter, I met him. After that, I joined Mr. Venugopal, and I met him at one of the, Mr. Venugopal always throws a retirement party for the judge. That's the only time he invites anybody, sitting judge home. And then he looked at me and said, you've done well for yourself. With the permission, let me also say that as a guidance, Mr. Venugopal has written an autobiography, The Accidental Lawyer, which I think all of you should read. It's an invaluable book and something that will greatly contribute to everybody. So with the permission of EBC, let me say that Accidental Lawyer should definitely be brought by everyone. Let me just wind this up with one more thing that I think that it was touched upon. Two things. One is the emotional baggage with respect to being a lawyer and how do you deal with it. And this I will read from Mr. Subramaniam's preface to the book, when he refers to the book and he says, beyond the technical skills required in legal practice, this book acknowledges the emotional and psychological toll that advocacy entails. The courtroom can be a place of triumph, but also of deep frustration. The inability to be heard, the setbacks faced, and the burden of self-guilt following a loss are challenges that every lawyer encounters. In this context, Talha has written about a case that he did where, in spite of great effort, he was not successful. And for many days, he was wallowing in guilt, in not having done enough for the client. And what did he do? He penned a letter to Mr. Subramaniam. And at page 202 he has reproduced a written reply that Mr. Subramaniam gave, where he says, so let me just read that part. When I was not able to emerge out of the self-guilt of the adverse order in the case and 2 other cases, I wrote to my senior, Mr. Gopal Subramaniam, who gave me some sound advice, which included the words, so remember that you are your own laboratory and have to carry out experiments in truth and reason. I think this is something that all of the mentors here have handheld and, and it's something that everybody, Raj's juniors tell me about situations where Raj has gone out of his way to help them deal with the emotional baggage of not being able to do enough in the case. So if, sir, starting with you, if you could just tell us something.
Well, there are good days, there are bad days, but I think I would like to offer some advice on how to deal with this. One is you are an individual, and as an individual, you are entitled to your space, you're entitled to your unique way of presenting a matter, you're entitled to your growth as a lawyer. This is one part of it. But never become so exclusive that you lose a sense of social connectedness to the community of lawyers. This is very important. You must have a sense of a community. You belong to a community of lawyers. Why is that sense of community important? It's not only for the sake of Adlerian connectedness or social connectedness that you need to have this feeling. It is only as a community that you can actually carve out a chapter of common values, say democracy, say freedom. And it is only then you would be able to actualize this. The only way one can actualize these are not by mere repetition of these words. In terms of manifestation on the ground, each one of these concepts has a specific meaning. And appeal to all of you to go to the ABA website, the American Bar Association website, and see the responses and how they stood up against the government when law firms were being punished and were being made to agree to all sorts of unconscionable demands. But more than anything else, they constituted a task force. How can democracy be saved? And what is the role of the legal profession in saving democracy? It's written by two chairs, one of whom is former Federal Appellate Court Judge Michael Luttig. It's a brilliant report. The report is a wealth of information, and it tells lawyers in clear terms that if you want really to protect democracy, what are the additional steps, additional awareness you must bring to bear in that sphere, which is why it's so necessary, while you may not have the title of an association, but that sense of community of lawyers, I think, is very important. If you have that sense of community, there's another advantage. You will never feel isolated. You will at least be able to find one person on a bad day to share your travails.
I think we're running out of time. Let me just end with quoting something that, again, Mr. Subramaniam has written in his preface. The law is not just a means to earn a living, but a quasi-self-transcendent pursuit, one that challenges the intellect and refines the moral compass of those who engage with it seriously. I hope this discussion today has elevated all of us as lawyers. Thank you.
I'm just going to intervene and just make one observation, and then I have one question for the panel. I was in Mr. Venugopal's chamber for 10 months, and what I learned in those 10 months is absolutely invaluable. And I just endorse what Mr. Divan says. Read every book. And his book, Accidental Lawyer, is definitely a read. So please, I would also endorse it, and I would request all of you to read it. My second one is, this is a question I thought I would ask the panel. Kamini ma'am, thank you for taking out the time for being here with us, and with Liz on the panel. If we were to look at the number of the gender thing in law firms, it's sort of now it's there if you look at in-house counsel. But when we look at the practice of law, there are far and few between. And lawyers make judges, and when we look at the judges on our courts, the representation is not adequate. So this is just something for this panel, and would love for the thoughts on all four of you. Does it need intervention, or do you think eventually it will even itself out?
Can you repeat your question, because I think
I said that if we were to look at the, let's say, the gender equality amongst in-house counsel or law firm practice, it's kind of equal. But if you were to look at the practice of law before courts, I would, in my sense, would be that it's just not as equal. So do you believe that it would, over a period of time, even itself out, or does some intervention, or is this something that is required? And especially when we're talking of chamber practice, and we're talking of mentors, and we're talking of seniors here, and we've got a lot of junior advocates here. So
it's a very important point. I think it's one of the least discussed matters, but I think it's got very, very important ramifications. The first is we don't easily acknowledge that we are a deeply patriarchal society. We don't acknowledge it very readily. We also do not acknowledge that many of our structures have embedded cultures of misogyny. It is something which I'm saying with a lot of consciousness, because I've studied the subject. I, for one, believe that if you want to give de facto recognition to gender equality, then there has to be more proactive steps. There have to be more proactive choices which have to be made. There have to be more proactive policies to ensure that at least, say, a 40 to 50% of your chambers consists of people of another gender. It's very, very necessary to do that. There is another area where it ought to be done, which is in judicial appointments. In judicial appointments, I have always taken the view that the Constitution did not intend the trial courts or subordinate courts to be a permanent feature in the Constitution. It has come to stay, and I say with regret, that was not the intention. The intention was that they would be equivalent to Supreme Courts, which is why it is only our Constitution which has a provision almost like Article 3, which is under Article 32(3), Parliament by law can authorize courts other than the High Courts to issue writs and other remedies exactly like the Supreme Court. What does this mean? This means that the three courts will almost be lateral, although they might be appellate inter se, but they're meant to be of equal quality. If you have a vision like that, it is perfectly possible to work on gender recognition, and I think there is no doubt, in my opinion, that in terms of competence, quality, integrity, industry, they are as good as anyone else. So I'm completely, unabashedly a feminist, and I'm saying that this has to be corrected.
Actually, after I finished Talha's excellent book, I asked myself, in the spirit of what Gopal mentioned, that we're always questioning ourselves. I said, what's the matter with this book? And what's wrong with the book? What's missing in the book? And the only answer I came up with was that it was missing, perhaps, the voice of a young female lawyer. Because that's a lived experience. And I was, it's something which they don't teach you in law school. Because of our patriarchal society and structures, you're not conditioned for it. So you go through college and school on an absolutely equal footing. And then suddenly something happens when you enter the real world and into our societal structures, where there are challenges which young members of the women at the bar face, which they're probably not prepared for. So I think you need either a co-author or because I think that has to sort of spring from a very genuine space and a lived experience. Because I don't think it's something which a gentleman can, very easily convey. That said, I think, therefore, in my sense, that commitment and endurance has to be even greater, I think, at least for this current generation of women lawyers. It's an added burden to all the social responsibilities which additionally come and expectations which come. But I think we have a sufficient number of examples at the bar which should inspire young women to stay the course. You find that in in-house counsel, you find that in firms, you find that amongst counsel. And these are probably examples and shared experiences which will help each one of you, I think, build in confidence and stay the course. Thanks.
So I've been fortunate. A large chunk of my colleagues have been ladies. Most of them have been fabulous, as in, I think, because they juggle many things. So for a while, the rumor was if you joined Raj's chamber, you would never get married. Okay. So fortunately, that has changed. But I was talking to Swati Sukumar this morning, and she spent the last 2 days with a sick child, and she was in court every day arguing matters the whole day. You see a whole bunch of them going through, their regular day. You don't find them wanting on the professional front, and they're handling a whole bunch of things. my wife is a lawyer, but she took a back seat, right? And she made a call, but she probably still works harder than I do on a daily basis. And she has the ability to balance a whole bunch of things. The difference, I think, is this, and I speak from a Delhi perspective. The number of women lawyers today that Delhi sees is a large, I think, the ratio is far more in Delhi than I think in other states or whatever. But it is increasing. And that is also a reflection of the number of women who are getting into law schools. I think we have statistics on the lower judiciary where I think now the entrance, insofar as women judges are concerned, is far more than men. And that is a reflection. I also believe that, and again, this is the opposite of misogyny. I believe that women have a far higher moral compass on a large number of things. At least that's been my experience. And that, according to me, adds to the ecosystem and will only go to make it a better space. But yes, as Mr. Divan says, we are still struggling to find our first Chief Justice who will come for a brief interlude in the overall scheme of things. I was at a dinner day before yesterday and somebody asked me, who according to you would have been a great Chief Justice? And I said, Justice Ruma Pal. She's the one Chief Justice we should have had and we didn't, right? So, and why? Because I think she said
Sujata Manohar.
Or Justice Manohar, yes. I was very young when I saw Justice Manohar. She was in court 4 when I saw her. But yes, for me it was Justice Ruma Pal because I saw her and Justice Bharucha sitting there and I could not tell the difference. It was a formidable bench as a young lawyer, but that's what I saw. And I think, they can put their minds to it. I guess all of us can, but I think women are far, far, far more resilient. And that's the word that Mr. Divan was using. I said that on the record in the context of, what is the one trait of a young lawyer? And the instinctive word that came out of my mouth too was exactly that, resilient. Women are far, far more resilient. And I think you can see that. It's a reflection of times. I think look at the next decade and perhaps there will be a distinct difference in that ratio. Sumit.
Please, with your permission, can I have a voice in the audience? I am in the practice for just because the Friday after evening, something has to be told about the two guests, chief guest and the guest of honor. I'm in practice for last 41 years and I think 2/3 of the audiences would not be of that age. Let me share one very small thing. Once I took Mr. Subramaniam for a very heavy matter to Lucknow and we appeared before the court. We held long conferences and at 9 in the evening, Mr. Gopal, I call him Gopal, Gopal tells me that I do have to join me in the swimming pool and the swimming pool was closed at 9 p.m. So we had to take all the Taj this thing to request them that please open the swimming pool. Mr. Subramaniam will join me in the swimming pool. You must know that what all you. And one more interesting anecdote, incident which I must share about the guest of honor's dad, Mr. Anil Divan. Once we were doing a very heavy matter of a coffee board matter in which we were being led by Mr. Nariman. And for our misfortune, or it was a fortunate event, Mr. Nariman was called for some international event and he had to go abroad and ultimately Mr. Anil Divan was to lead us. Now my senior, Mrs. Manik Karanjawala, went and held conferences with him till 3 in the morning and then he tells us, please come back, and those days were not the days of SCC and EBC was nowhere, those platforms were not available. He tells us come back at 8 a.m. and give me all those judgments so we went back to the office, we didn't have a sleep and whole day we worked in the
Thank you so much, sir, for those anecdotes. Liz, ma'am, your views on Sumit sir's question. Those are the most important views, everyone would agree.
Well, I have practiced only in Supreme Court, and I must say that in the first few years, till I became a senior, gender played really no part in my experience as a junior. Maybe it was a matter of great privilege because I started off with Justice Malhotra's office where she was an AOR, and when there was a last-minute SLP to be filed and prepared, I would work till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and there was no consideration that you are a female lawyer and therefore you will not, stay later for work. So in terms of work being given, experiences that I had as a junior, I think I had the best of experiences. And gender really did not play a part, which I mean, it is my privilege that it was so. But I hope that is a privilege that I can share with many of my juniors now, with the number of women and with the number of women increasing. And that was also because of the path walked by people like Kamini ma'am and Indu ma'am and Indra Jaising and Meenakshi Arora and so many others. Their struggles made it much easier for us. So where and thereafter when I transitioned to Mr. Venugopal's office again, I think it did not matter. The work that came to us, apparently, I mean, for us, we saw that it was a very equal sort of playing field. But now when I look back, there are certain cases where we were shielded, I think, by the good seniors, from people, the clients who came and said, oh, is it a lady junior who's working on your matter? I never got that information because I was shielded from things like that. But thereafter, I think when we became, I mean, as a senior advocate now, where you're more in a position of authority, I see that there is a pushback because people are okay with you reaching a certain level, but beyond that, there is a certain circumspection whether you should be allowed. Now, that's a path that hopefully we will walk, and we will make it easier for those to follow, for those who will follow.
Thank you so much, everyone on the panel. Thank you, ma'am, for leading the discussion so beautifully. And thank you, sir, for asking such an important question. Now it's time to hear Mr. Author.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, everyone. It has been a very remarkable and memorable evening for me. I had the opportunity of sitting next to my mentor and somebody whom I have tried to emulate as much as I could, Mr. Divan and Raj sir and so many other seniors here. And trust me, some of the briefings with those seniors have more been like a cross-examination, and I have learned so much in each of those briefings. There's no structured learning that happens in our profession, and that's why some of those areas I have carved out in my book. I would say that a book, even though it's written in solitude, it finds meaning only when it enters the community. And today, I'm grateful that this book is actually launched by somebody whom I admire a lot. And today, this book has entered the fraternity. Now, there's a part in that book that develops on this concept of fraternity in the profession, where I say that a large number of juniors are always looking for answers. And it's very easy to walk up to a senior and tell them that this is the difficulty. Even if a point of law you want to discuss with somebody, you can just walk up to them and discuss. But we are so taken aback by this stature that we don't even attempt to do that. So when Mr. Subramaniam said that juniors are always welcome, that's a matter of fact. So, and you are actually, everybody is welcome to have a chat with anybody they want to at any point of time. In the corridors, the coffee is on them, of course. When I entered the profession, I was indeed very lucky, because even though I was a first generation lawyer, I had the opportunity of working with Zia in Bombay. And then I joined Mr. Subramaniam here, then my senior colleagues in Lucknow. So I had the chance to work in Bombay, in Lucknow, in Delhi, and all total different work cultures. And I have gathered a large part of how to approach things from different styles of working, different cities and different courts. And all of them I have tried to put this in one place here. This book is a small attempt that aims to be a companion for a young lawyer in the early years of profession, which is full of uncertainty and struggle. It attempts to engage with some ethical questions as well, and some questions that call for introspection in the profession. I have carefully used the word profession, which is not a business and it is not a service. It is strictly a profession. Now that comes with a lot of responsibility, and it comes with skills and calls upon you to take judgments that advance the law, judgments that advance the civilization as a whole. I mean, if you look at the march of law from 1950, at least 1950 till today, there are places that the courts have faltered, maybe on account of advocacy of lawyers, but it also has improved significantly. The rights are better enforced, and that's because we as a fraternity have stood up to all of those values, and that's the responsibility that the fraternity has as a shared I would say, force that the profession thrusts upon us. And only those who are willing to carry that burden should enter the profession, because it will require you to sacrifice, including a Friday evening like this. What I have attempted to do in this book is to develop a central idea, that is how to be useful. This book only tells you how you can be useful in an office, in a chamber, how you can be useful even to a clerk in the chamber, how can you be useful to the senior in the chamber, I mean, simply by telling page numbers, for example, or how can you be useful in the courtroom, in the system, and eventually when you grow up, how can you be useful in advancement of the law. So the guiding force of this book is just being useful, nothing more. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for writing the book and giving us the opportunity to be a part of that journey. Thank you everyone for taking out time from your busy schedules to be here with us. Thank you, the IIC team, the EBC team who organized this, your team, the team EBC who brought in chambers to life, and the beautiful audience, and especially the two little girls who have made the environment even more so lovely.